The representation of nature in Indian art pictorial tradition, particularly Indian miniatures, is distinctly different from that of the West. Whereas in the West during the Renaissance, mathematical laws of perspective were developed in order to render realistically the third dimension of space, that kind of interest was not manifest in the Indian visual pictorial tradition. Nature as such, appearing as landscapes, served the double purpose of either describing the beauty or alluding to the beauty of the young woman or a heroine or the Naika, or it served to show the various emotional conditions or the avastha which the heroine was going through in her anticipation of love in union or the love in separation. Looking at the themes or the subject matter within the Indian art, Indian miniatures, as a matter of fact, has come out of a very poetic, literary, epic, and a mythological tradition. It has been especially the poetry, the love poetry written by great poets and authors as the Hala, Ashwaghosha, Kalidasa, and Jayadeva, which describes not only the beauty of the woman but also her different states of mind and heart of her love in union and separation. As well as, most importantly, what needs to be mentioned is that the eight states of moods or the emotions that a heroine goes through when separated from her lover, what is commonly known as the Ashtanayikas or the eight heroines, was first mentioned by Bharata in his Natya Shastra. And this becomes a very important element of the representation of the Nayikas, where she is shown in a different states. Either she is going out, braving all kinds of rough weather, or she is waiting for him, having created a little bower with leaves, etc., and the expectation of his arrival, etc. Also, Keshav Das, the Orcha poet of 16th century, wrote his very famous Rasikapriya, in which he once again shows the representation of these eight Nayikas or the Nayaks, the heroes. And these have been shown in a very playful manner, so much so that Keshav Das's Rasikapriya became very popular from the 16th to almost the 19th century. Another important tradition, which was an oral tradition and based in the folklore, was the poems of Baramasa. Baramasa, translating as the 12 months of the year, was passed on orally, but it found great favor with the Indian miniature artists as it enabled, with the changing seasons, also to show the changing moods and emotions of the heroine. And Baramasa primarily is based on the separation of the lovers, and it is this pain of separation which has been pictorially represented in Indian miniatures in the month of Sawan when it is lush and green, and how the heroine awaits and feels the pain of separation, or the month of spring, etc. Another very important subject matter was the visualization of a very abstract music tradition in what is known as the ragamalas or the musical modes. These ragamalas are the visually interpreted by the Indian artist a subject matter which has never been attempted anywhere else in the world as it has been done here by the miniature artists and especially their patrons. But one thing to remember is that in all of these subject matter, whether it is the uh, Ashtanayikas or whether it is Bhanudatta's Rasamanjari or Keshav Das's Rasikapriya, or it is a representation of the Baramasa or the uh, the Ragamalas, one thing which remains a commonality is that the main protagonist or the hero and the heroine is always Krishna and Radha. These are the archetypal lovers, very romantic, and at the same time showing the different moods and emotions that a heroine or a woman goes through when separated from the lover. For example, when we come to the Ashtanayikas, the most famous and most popular with the Indian artist was the Abhisarika Nayika. Abhisarika is one of those Nayikas who braves the thick night, dark night, which is laden with much dangers, and she has to go through the forest. The sky is overladen with clouds, heavy clouds, and the rain may come down any moment. So it's the thick black night, and it is through this thick black night that she passes through, not concerned about any dangers which are lurking there in terms of a snake or in terms of any other creatures that could be there, including the spirits which are found there in this forest, which are not at all inhabited. But she braves all that and she goes out to meet her lover. Symbolically, it is also the representation of the soul in search of the Atman. So, basically, philosophically, the Indian miniatures with these archetypal lovers of Radha and Krishna and their moments of separation also shows the search of the soul, Atman, for the superior ultimate reality. Another very popular Ashtanayika heroine is that of Utkantita Naika. Utkantita Naika is the expectant heroine. She goes out into the garden, creates a very comfortable space, creates a bed of leaves, has the garlands hanging from the trees. She herself is very beautifully dressed and she sits in expectation of her lover. But she does not get angry when the lover doesn't turn up, and she excuses him that it must be some kind of a business which must have held him up. Now, what needs to be noticed in all of these is the representation of nature. So, Abhisarika Naika has the thick forest represented to show the dangers, whereas in the Utkantita Naika, it is the lushness of nature, the budding love which is there in her heart as she waits for the lover to come. So, in terms of the profusion of the foliage, of the trees, of the birds, the leaves, the flowers, the garlands, and especially the flowing water, which is always there in most of the majority of the Indian miniature painting, water as an element of emotion. So if it is a simple, still, placid water, then it shows the stillness in our heart. But if it is a rapid swirling waters, then it shows the same condition that prevails within her heart and the mind. Another very famous, popular Naika is that what is known as a Vasaka Sajja Naika. She's the one, who waits. She herself adorns the bed or adorns the bower and awaits the lover. But she gets a little upset when he doesn't turn up. And interestingly, what is shown here as an example is the Vasaka Sajja representation from the Rasika Priya by Keshav Das. So she is shown seated among lushness of greenery, the lushness of nature, the fecundity of nature that is also reflective of the woman. And she is surrounded by a variety of animals and birds. Since this is from Bundi, obviously it reflects the forests of Bundi, which were very lush, filled with trees, filled with swirling rivers and waters, the birds, the animals, a kind of a happy optimism. That is what the artist has seen around and has reflected here. But remember, nature remains only symbolic and it only alludes to the emotions or the physical beauty of the woman. Moving on to the various seasons, the Baramasa. And here we have the representation of the summer elephant. Summer is the month when it is very hot, especially in central India, the North India. And here it is not a representation of lovers, but here it is the representation of the pain and the uncomfortable position of the animals as the heat, as the sun beats down with all its heat on the Mother Earth. So here a representation of an elephant is shown who is very restless, who seems to be trumpeting. And there's one more elephant which is shown in the background, almost climbing the mountain in its madness because of the heat. But at the same time, the artist has also shown a small tank or a body of water which is filled with lotus and leaves, and an elephant which is frolicking there. A monkey is also seated on a tree, and the tree is bereft of any foliage. The next painting is exactly the opposite of the summer month, and this is the month of Savan, the monsoon. And the coming of monsoon, it is said to be the most painful for the separated heroine from her husband or the lover who's away for a long time, almost 12 months in a year. So here the heroine is shown. She's seated and in total uh, uh, pain of pangs of separation, and the Sakis or her friends are trying to revive her, though it's very cool outside, but then the heat of meeting with the lover, which is not going to happen, is what keeps her very uncomfortable. And there's also a few women in the background who are perhaps making a sandal paste to apply on her body. But what is more important is that, her state of her physical being as well as her mental state is reflected not in the background. But the background is very beautiful. It is the month of rain. The clouds are heavy. There is lightning which goes like a snaking across the clouds. And at the same time, there are also birds, egrets, which are flying and which are associated with the rainy season. She is seated in a pavilion which is surrounded by the water. So the water here again is very still and placid, but it does not reflect her emotions. And it is said that Savan is the month when sexual union is kind of mandated. But here it just does not happen because the lover still hasn't returned. The next subject matter is that of the musical modes or the ragamala. The popular ragamalas are Meghmalar or the Hindola Raga, Vasanta Raga. All of these are quite popular. So here is an example from the Deccan region, and it shows the Hindola Raga. Hindola Raga is associated with the coming or the onset of the monsoon, when these swings are tied uh, on the trees, especially in the villages, and then the young girls swing on it and playfully also sing songs. So, what is represented here is first and foremost the trees in the background, which are lush and they are filled with egrets, and the swing on which the hero and heroine are seated. The heroine is seated on the lap of the man, and they are surrounded by women musicians who will also provide the music. So, it's a very happy atmosphere where the lovers are together. The next very important example is that of a Todi Ragini. Todi Ragini is said to be the wife of Hindola Raga, and she is described. Both the Hindola Raga and the Todi Ragini are said to express the moods of nature. And in the musical verses, Todi Ragini is described as a woman with sharp eyes and a slender, delicate body, and she is shown seated. She holds a veena in her hand, and there's a pair of animals, namely the buck and the deer, are standing in front of her, but she pushes them away because she can't bear to see the couple as such, who are very happy because her own state of being is that of pains of or the pangs of separation. Interestingly, if you're looking behind, you will find that the tree is entwined with the creeper, and that creeper has the foliage which is hanging down, almost like a weeping willow. So these are allusion in nature of her emotional state, because the creeper is clinging on to the trunk, and then uh, the foliage which is hanging down shows her sadness. So an embrace which she is missing out, as well as the buck and the deer whom she is pushing away, and at the same time there's also a water body which is seen to be flowing nearby her. uh, the music that she plays, of course, has to do with the personification of the raga itself. In addition to this, we also find that uh, beauty of the woman and how the beauty of the woman is represented, and there cannot be any better example than that of the representation of Bani Thani from Kishangarh. Here is the woman who has really captured the imagination of the artist Nihal Chand, who was the court painter, and her beauty has a parallel to nature. Uh, this representation of nature in terms of the beauty of the woman has been described by Kalidasa in his Meghdut. And the sensual beauty and charm of the young woman has always captured the imagination of the painter, the sculptor, the poet, and the writer, so much so that the image and the imagination has always come together to produce some of the most beautiful images of women within India's pictorial tradition. So here we find a representation of Bani Thani, or the one who is fully dressed. So she has long, jet black, luxuriant hair, which is compared uh, to the uh, bees clustering, the mass of bees clustering around a flower. Her eyebrows are either like the bow or they are like the shallow swirls of the waters. Her radiant face is similar to the cool radiance of the moon, and her lips, they are like the bimba fruits, and her entire complexion reflects the representation of nature as such, which is lush and beautiful, and which is represented here. Of course, she holds the lotus buds in her fingers, and her fingers are as elegant as the lotus stems that she holds very charmingly and very graciously in her hand. Considered as the Mona Lisa of Indian art tradition, but I think she goes beyond Mona Lisa because she's not an enigma, but very much a woman with her beauty shining forth and alluding to various forms from nature. Another painting, perhaps from the Gita Govind, which shows Radha and Krishna in a grove. And this Radha and Krishna in a grove again shows the moment of union in the way Radha is being pulled towards Krishna by him and the surrounding nature. There are trees with creepers, there are birds in pairs, and lotus in bloom or the lotus with buds, the leaves, and especially the banana plant. The banana plant, which is full of fruits, is reflective again of the fecundity of the woman and also the sensuous charm of the woman. So nature within Indian art tradition in this respect allows this kind of a representation. It's not independent, it is not autonomous, but in a very poetic manner, it has always been shown so that it remains a kind of a parallel allusion to the representation of the moods, the emotions, the physical form, the actions performed by the hero and the heroine. Hence, nature within Indian art tradition, therefore, remains only as a symbol, as an illusion, and never as a autonomous landscape as one finds it in the West. But the emotions continues to exist as uh, representative or the symbolic elements of nature are shown.